Hi, this is Barry Hensley with another episode of The Foundation Guy. And today we're going to talk about engineers. As most of you probably already know, to build just about any kind of a structure, you have to have an engineer to engineer the foundation and make sure that it's done right. And we've got a guest with us to help us talk about this today. His name is Jordan Ray with Artec Engineering. His website is artec, A-R-T-E-C .solutions. And Jordan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Hey Barry, thanks for having me on today.
You bet.
So a little background on me. I'm a structural engineer based out of the Dallas area. Generally, we do work all over Texas for builders primarily. So a lot of single-family residential projects to multifamily, light commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've been in the business for a little while now, and gotten to meet a lot of different people, and have a lot of different good and bad experiences with Texas construction.
I'll bet. There's a lot of it going on. I know that.
Yeah, it's a great time to be in construction.
Yeah, and you do your firm actually is multifaceted. You do architectural as well, don't you? In your
Yeah,
firm?
so I'm a structural engineer, and so I kind of run the engineering side of the business, and I partner with, it's kind of a family business. My dad and brother are both architects.
Awesome.
And so that's kind of what got our name together. It's Artec Integrated Solutions. And yeah, so projects that make sense, we kind of partner up and team up on, and we provide kind of an all-inclusive solution for developers or builders and contractors. And so we're able to kind of provide all the architecture, all the civil and structural engineering in-house. And then we bring in just the MEP engineering, and we can kind of provide a full consultant role.
Soup to nuts, the whole thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Great.
That's
That's
right.
great.
Yeah.
Good. All of it in-house.
That's right.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about, selecting the right engineer or picking an engineer for a project. Who should I look for? What qualifications should that person have? I don't want to go in the yellow pages and just look under engineering and dial the first number that comes up.
Yeah.
So if I'm a custom home builder. So if I've got a residential project going on and I need to have an engineer do the foundation for me, what should I look for?
So for sure, you're going to want to look for someone who's got licensing in the state that you're in, someone that's been practicing, in your area for a decent amount of time. You're going to need them to be, licensed to be a structural engineer, and that's kind of their focus. The way Texas works is every engineer who gets licensed is kind of obligated to practice within their specialty. So
within, you can't just be an engineer and do everything. Within engineering, you've got a specialty that you're going to apply your craft towards.
that's right. So there might be licensed engineers that you could call, but maybe they actually design water lines, or they do, site civil engineering or drainage design. And they would not be, the type of engineer you'd want to call for structural design for residential. So you'll want someone with, the background. You've got to have, an education in engineering, have passed all the exams, and then ideally someone who likes to focus and work in your industry.
Yeah. So as a custom home builder, if I'm building a custom home, I want to ask this person, do you do structural engineering for single family residential projects?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because another issue you may run into is you might call some engineers and their focus is major, commercial projects. Maybe they're doing big high-rise condo projects or hospitals or something like that. Maybe that's all they do. They may not be familiar with the type of construction or the type of designs that are common for single-family residential. Because in my experience, I've noticed that the two different worlds of commercial and residential, they work a decent amount differently. And so when I've seen projects where an engineer who does primarily heavy commercial projects is doing, a slab on grade for a single family home, they'll typically go about it in a way that is uncommon for a lot of the subcontractors or concrete contractors that they're used to seeing things. And so it causes a lot of kinks in the system, or ends up with some budgets getting blown because just the way that they've engineered it. Not that it's wrong,
Right.
but it's just in a way that's not common for a single family.
It's not what the contractors are used to seeing.
Right. You kind of have a different contractor base for residential than you do for commercial. And so
Yeah.
you could, you got to kind of be aware of that and
Yeah.
anticipate those things.
Yeah. Now I remember there was another episode you helped us with where we talked about foundations, different types of foundations. Would there be a different engineer for different types of foundations? Would there be one like I know we talked about pier and beam, and we talked about slab on grade, and we talked about waffle mat, and would there be a different engineer for a different type? If I'm a custom home builder, and I may not say I want to do pier and beam, but maybe this
Right.
particular job needs to be pier and beam for whatever reason, or maybe I want to do waffle mat. Would there be a different engineer for a different type of foundation?
So typically not. Usually, an engineer who understands those different types of foundations and is used to working in, single family residential, they'll be able to design, any one of those types of foundation systems and can also help you make a determination along with the geotechnical engineer on the best foundation system to use, based on performance and cost.
So the engineer can do any foundation that I want. So when I'm selecting an engineer, I really want one who's done that type of structure before. Like in my case, it's a
Right.
single family residential, and then that engineer can give me whatever foundation is needed for that particular project.
That's right. Yeah. So, as long as the engineer's been around long enough to have, worked on all the different types, then, generally they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And most engineers who've been around for a while have done all of the different types of foundations that are typical or appropriate for single family.
Yeah. Now, will an engineer? I mean, it's an undergraduate degree, right? An engineering degree. I know you've got your master's also, but
Yes.
would an engineer come right out of school and have his own engineering firm, his or her engineering firm, or would they work for another engineer? What would be more typical?
Yes. So no, before you get licensed, you have to go through, it's kind of like an internship, apprenticeship type of process. They call it engineering training.
Okay.
So you have to get your 4-year accredited degree in the type of engineering you want to work in. But generally, your degree is kind of broad. You kind of touch all the different types of civil engineering, structural engineering during your education. And then you have to pass an exam that's called the Fundamentals of Engineering exam. And so that'll give you all of the fundamentals that kind of proves that you kind of know enough to get going in the industry and you're proficient in.
Is that a state exam?
It is a national exam. It's administered
Okay.
by the states, but it's
Okay.
a National Council of Engineers examinations. So the same group that oversees the PE exam
Okay.
oversees that one.
So when you pass your engineering exam, you can design in any state?
So when you pass that, when you pass that and you have your bachelor's degree, then you're able to get kind of certified in your state as an engineer in training. So you have to actually send your paperwork to the Board of Engineers in your state. So you can take the exam anywhere. The exam is kind of transferable between states, but you have to actually apply to your specific state or states to get that accreditation or certification.
Gotcha. And then you start out as an engineer in training, working, I guess, under the supervision of another engineer?
That's right. So you have to get, right now it's 4 years of experience working under the supervision of a licensed engineer
Okay.
in the field or specialty that you want to, that you're gaining that experience in.
Okay.
And so basically you're doing engineering work, but you're being mentored and overseen by a licensed engineer that's got a lot more experience, and it's basically on the job training.
That sounds like a good thing to me. I mean,
Yeah, it
you're
is.
going to come out of school and have to get at least 4 years experience working under a seasoned engineer before you
Right.
can go off and hang a shingle on the wall somewhere and open your own shop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
makes-
then, with that experience, you have to gain that experience before you can take the final exam, I guess, the licensing exam. And
Yeah.
that's what you need to be able to practice.
Yeah. Now, other than foundations, what other things can I ask an engineer to do for me?
So a structural engineer can basically design anything for the structure of the building you have. So like what we do is we design everything from the foundation up through the roof system. And so all of the structural framing, all the beams, rafters, ceiling joists, walls, all of that gets engineered and put in as part of the construction documents to build on.
Okay, fantastic. So from the ground to the roof, structural engineer can do it all for me.
If it's carrying some kind of load, they can figure it out.
Yeah. Now, do you do inspections? Do engineers do inspections also?
So we do all our own inspections. Typically, an engineer will do all their own inspections as far as their own projects that they design. So they'll come out and inspect the foundation before you pour, make sure you have all the proper reinforcement and you're constructing it per their plans. And then they'll come out and inspect the framing. And usually that'll include all the framing elements as well as the sheathing and any shear wall designs that you have. Because they're also designing not just for the gravity loads, but the wind loads or seismic loads. And so they'll check to make sure everything's being constructed so that the building will withstand those loads.
Yeah, so not only do I have a plan to go by, but I got some on-site supervision as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and I actually spent, about 5 or 6 years. I still do it occasionally, but doing some work in forensics engineering. So, and I think it's kind of a good thing for most design engineers to get some experience with that, because it's basically coming out and looking at a building that has failed.
Find out what made it fail.
Right, or a foundation that's failed. I got a lot of insight working under another engineer who that's his primary practice is just looking at stuff that has been failed or might fail, or basically as a consultant coming out and checking and making sure that structures are safe, or if they're not safe, figuring out why and how to fix it. And so you can kind of identify a lot of issues that might happen 10 or 15 years after you design and build it. And it gives you a little bit of knowledge as to, how these buildings are performing long term.
Long term,
And
yeah.
you can work your design and kind of anticipate that in your design, because it's a lot of times stuff that's not really in the codes or in, any kind of calculations or manuals. It's a lot of it's just, kind of seeing it over and over and just getting a feel for what kind of things can happen.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we tend to focus a little bit too much on new construction, and we're doing this episode for the foundation guy, and I know that there's content on there that's going to be talking about older foundations as well. So I'm
Right.
glad you brought up the forensics, because people need to know if they're just buying an older home or buying an older building, who do they call?
Right.
Same person, structural engineer. But you
Yep.
probably want to ask them if they have experience doing forensic investigations or
Yes.
forensic analysis. Is that what you would call it?
That's correct. Yeah, because there's a lot of firms out there that's all they do is forensic investigations or analysis, and some of them do both, design and forensics. So
And you've done both.
I've done both. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, great. That's good. Well, hey, I appreciate you being here with us today. Is there anything I've left out about an engineer that people need to know?
No, I don't think so. I think you kind of well covered all the qualifications and everything. And
Maybe your phone number, call me.
yeah. Call me, look me up. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to, answer.
Yeah.
If you get any, listener questions, things like that,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to respond.
Good, good. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks to Dallas On Air for giving us their studio to record this podcast. I do want to say that this podcast is brought to you by Waffle Mat. Waffle Mat's our sponsor, and Waffle Mat happens to be the leading foundation system for single-family, multifamily, light commercial structures built on expansive, rocky, compressible, or liquefiable soils. Over 30 million square feet of Waffle Mat foundations have been installed across the U.S. since its introduction in 1993. Waffle Mat not only delivers superior performance when compared to other foundation systems, but additionally delivers significant cost savings by reducing soil prep and building cycle time. Good stuff. Check out Waffle Mat. Thanks to our sponsor. Thanks to Dallas On Air. That ends this podcast.
The views, information, and/or opinions expressed during this recording are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of SmartSense Structural Systems and its assigns.